I want to tell you about the day I realized I had been thinking about money completely wrong for 20 years. It wasn't a market crash. It wasn't a bad investment. It was a Tuesday. Nothing happened. I was sitting in my kitchen, finances in decent shape, no debt, a stable job, and I felt this low hum of anxiety that I couldn't explain. Not I'm broke anxiety, a quieter one, the kind that whispers, is this it? Is this all the money is going to do for me? And that question sent me down a rabbit hole that changed how I think about every dollar I earn, save, and spend. What I found wasn't a formula. It wasn't a spreadsheet trick. It was something almost embarrassingly simple. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. So here's what I want to do in the next few minutes. I want to walk you through the actual psychology of why money makes some people calm and other people miserable, regardless of how much they have. Stick around because by the end of this, you're going to look at your own bank account differently. Not because I'm going to tell you to save more or spend less. I'm going to tell you something more useful than that. Let's start with a question. What does financial independence actually mean to you? Most people answer this the same way. They picture a finish line, a number, some magic figure where they never have to work again, where they can lie on a beach for the rest of their life doing nothing. And here's the problem with that definition. For the overwhelming majority of people, that number is so far away, so detached from their actual life, that the whole idea of financial independence starts to feel like a fantasy reserved for other people. Tech founders, trust fund kids, not you. And that's a shame because it means most people write themselves out of a conversation that actually applies to them more than almost anything else in personal finance. Because independence was never really about quitting work forever. That's one flavor of it, sure, and it's a fine goal if it's yours. But the deeper, more useful version of independence is something much smaller and much more attainable. It's optionality. It's the ability to say no. It's the space between what life demands of you and what you're forced to accept because you have no other choice. Let me put it in blunt terms. Imagine two people. Both hate their jobs equally. Both have a boss who treats them poorly. One of them has 3 months of expenses saved. The other has 3 years saved. They are experiencing two completely different jobs, even though the paycheck, the tasks, and the boss are identical. One person is trapped. The other person has leverage. The 3-year saver can say, this isn't working for me, and walk. The 3-month saver has to grit their teeth and stay because the alternative is worse than the discomfort. That gap, that's what your savings actually buy you. Not a beach, not a yacht, a voice. The ability to say no to things that are bad for you, whether that's a toxic workplace, a bad business deal, or a decision made under pressure instead of clarity. And here's the thing, almost nobody tells you, you don't feel this kind of independence every single day. Most of the time, it sits quietly in the background, doing nothing, like a spare tire in your trunk. You forget it's even there. But then, maybe once or twice in a decade, something happens. You get laid off, a relationship ends unexpectedly. Someone in your family gets sick, the economy seizes up like it did in 2008, or the whole world stops moving like it did in 2020. In that exact moment, every single dollar you didn't spend suddenly reveals its true purpose. It wasn't sitting there to make you rich. It was sitting there to make you free when freedom mattered most. That's the actual return on savings that nobody puts on a chart. It's not measured in percentage points. It's measured in how steady your hands are when everything around you is shaking. Now, here's where it gets interesting because knowing this doesn't automatically make you feel wealthy. I know plenty of people with healthy bank accounts who feel poor, and I know people with modest incomes who feel completely at peace. So clearly the amount of money isn't the deciding factor. Something else is going on, and that something else comes down to one uncomfortable little equation. Are you ready for it? Wealth, real felt wealth, not the number on a statement, but the feeling of having enough is simply what you have minus what you want. Say that again in your head. What you have minus what you want. Notice what that means. There are exactly two ways to increase your wealth by this definition. You can increase what you have, or you can decrease what you want. And almost every single financial strategy, every book, every YouTube video, every finance influencer on the planet is obsessed with the first lever and completely ignores the second. We talk endlessly about how to earn more, invest smarter, optimize your portfolio. Almost nobody talks about the fact that your wants are not fixed. They are not laws of physics. They are constructed mostly by comparison, mostly by what's in front of you, and they can expand or contract depending on what you feed them. Think about the last time you scrolled through photos of someone else's vacation, someone else's new kitchen, someone else's car. Did your bank account change in that moment? No, but your want did. Your sense of enough just quietly moved further away from you without your permission in about 4 seconds. That's the real danger of comparison. It's not that it makes you feel bad directly. It's that it silently redraws the finish line every single time you look at it. I've come to believe that managing your expectations is a financial skill every bit as real and every bit as valuable as budgeting or investing. Maybe more valuable because you can be a phenomenal saver and investor and still feel poor your entire life if your expectations are growing faster than your income. And I've also watched people with completely ordinary incomes live rich, satisfied lives because they simply refuse to let their wants outrun their means. Let me give you an example that stuck with me. A few years back, I was talking to a small business owner, someone doing fine, not spectacular, just fine. Steady income, modest house, older car. I asked him what his biggest financial fear was. I expected him to say something about the market or inflation or his retirement account. Instead, he said, "My biggest fear is that one day I'll start caring what my neighbor's car looks like." That answer floored me. He understood something most people spend their whole lives never figuring out, that the real threat to his financial peace wasn't a recession. It was his own attention drifting toward other people's lives. So why do we do this to ourselves? Why do we spend so much energy chasing the approval of people we don't even know? Because for most of human history, being noticed by your tribe mattered for survival. Status wasn't vanity, it was safety. If the group liked you, you got protection, resources, a mate, a future. That wiring didn't disappear just because we now live in a world of credit cards and Instagram. Brains are still running very old software on very new hardware. And the tragic irony is this: the software tells us to impress strangers. But here's the truth: almost nobody says out loud, those strangers are not thinking about you at all. They are busy running the exact same software, worrying about whether you're judging them. I think about this constantly now. When I catch myself imagining what people will think if I buy something or don't buy something, I try to remember the people I'm performing for in my head are not actually watching the show. They're backstage, worried about their own performance. Once that clicks, spending decisions get so much quieter, so much calmer. You stop buying a status symbol for an audience that was never paying attention in the first place. Now, I don't want to pretend this is easy because it's not, and I don't want to sit here and act like I have it all figured out either. I catch myself daydreaming about a bigger house, a nicer car, more square footage, more stuff more often than I'd like to admit. The difference isn't that I've eliminated the impulse. The difference is that I've learned to notice it, name it, and ask one simple question before I act on it. Am I buying this for me, or am I buying this for an audience? If the honest answer is for an audience, I usually put it down. Not always, I'm human, but usually. Here's another layer to this that I think gets missed constantly, and it might be the most important part of this whole video. When spending actually does make people happier, and it can, don't get me wrong, it's almost never the object itself doing the work. It's what the object enables. Let's say someone buys a bigger house and it genuinely makes them happier. Dig one layer deeper and ask why. It's usually not the square footage. It's that the bigger house means their parents can visit and stay the weekend. It means the extended family can gather for holidays without everyone crammed into a hallway. The house isn't the source of happiness. The connection the house enables is the source of happiness. Now flip that around and it gets uncomfortable fast. Imagine that same person in that same beautiful house, but their kids resent them, their health is falling apart, they're isolated from friends, and they lie awake every night stressed about things they can't control. Is that person happy? Obviously not. All the square footage in the world can't fix that. Meanwhile, picture someone in a completely average house, nothing special, nothing to post about, married to someone who adores them, surrounded by kids who feel safe and loved, sleeping well, showing up for their community. That second person is living what most of us would call a genuinely rich life, and their house has almost nothing to do with it. This is why I become suspicious of the popular advice that says spend on experiences, not things. It's not wrong exactly, but it's incomplete. And incomplete financial advice can be just as dangerous as bad advice because it gives you false confidence. The truth is more specific than that. It's not experiences versus things. It's connection versus isolation. You can have a miserable, isolating experience on a beautiful beach in a five-star resort, and you can have a deeply connected, joyful experience sitting on your own couch on a random Tuesday night, cooking dinner with people you love, laughing about nothing in particular. I had a night like that recently, nothing planned, no reservations, no destination, no photos worth posting. Just an ordinary evening at home that somehow turned into one of those nights where everyone is in a good mood at the same time. The conversation flows, the food turns out well, and you go to bed thinking that was close to perfect. It cost almost nothing. It will not show up on any bank statement as a memorable purchase. But if you ask me to rank my best days of the year, that night is near the top, sitting right next to trips that cost thousands of dollars. That should tell you something. It told me something. If you think back on your own life, and I mean really think back, I'd bet a good chunk of your happiest memories didn't cost very much at all. A lot of people, when you ask them about the best years of their life, point to high school or college. And what's the one thing almost everyone in that stage of life has in common? No money. None. You're broke, you're improvising, and yet you're surrounded by people laughing constantly with time that feels endless. Looking back, those might be some of the richest years of your entire life. Financially speaking, you had almost nothing. I'm not telling you to go be broke on purpose. That would be terrible advice, and I'd be a hypocrite for saying it. What I am telling you is this: pay very close attention to what actually produced those feelings, because it's rarely the price tag. It's connection, time, and presence. And if you can find ways to buy more of those three things directly without needing an expensive backdrop to justify them, you will get far more happiness per dollar than almost anyone chasing status symbols ever will. Now, let's talk about the flip side of this, because there's a strange and painful trap that catches people who have actually done everything right. Picture someone who saved diligently for 40 straight years. Every paycheck, a little goes into retirement. They never splurge irresponsibly. They hit their number. They cross the finish line everyone told them to aim for. And then something strange happens. They can't spend it. I've heard this from more than one financial advisor, almost word for word. The hardest part of their job isn't helping people save enough. It's giving people permission to spend what they've already saved. People who followed the rules for decades sit on a comfortable nest egg and still can't bring themselves to enjoy it. Because somewhere along the way, being a saver stopped being a strategy and became an identity. And identities are brutally hard to let go of, even when holding on to them no longer serves you. Think about how dangerous that is. The entire point of saving was to eventually give yourself options. But if you can never actually use those options, the money didn't set you free. It just became a new kind of cage, one with a much nicer view. Part of this comes from a very real, very rational fear. Nobody knows exactly how long they'll live, and running out of money late in life is a legitimate risk worth respecting. But part of it isn't rational at all. Part of it is simply that the identity of person who doesn't spend got welded onto their sense of self so tightly that spending, even smart, safe, well-calculated spending, feels like a betrayal of who they are. And this is a warning worth taking seriously no matter where you are in your financial life, whether you're 25 or 65. Be very careful about attaching your identity to any single financial behavior. I am a saver. I am frugal. I never carry debt. These all sound like virtues, and often they are. But the moment any of them becomes an identity instead of a tool, it stops serving you and starts controlling you. Money is supposed to be a tool in your hands. The instant you become a tool in its hands, something has gone wrong, even if your bank account looks perfectly healthy. So how do you actually make good decisions with money day to day without falling into either trap, spending to impress strangers, or hoarding so tightly you never enjoy what you built? Here's the framework I keep coming back to, and it has nothing to do with spreadsheets. Ask yourself what you'll regret, not today, not next month. Years from now, looking back, what will you wish you had done differently? This sounds soft, maybe even a little vague, but it's actually the sharpest filter I know, because it cuts through both extremes at once. If you're about to blow money on something purely to impress people who barely know you exist, ask, will I regret this in 10 years? Usually the honest answer is yes, or at best indifference. And if you're about to deny yourself something meaningful, real time with people you love, an experience that would genuinely connect you to your family, a moment you can't get back, ask the same question. Will I regret not doing this? Sometimes the honest answer is also yes. The problem, of course, is that we don't know exactly when our later will arrive. Nobody gets a countdown clock, which is exactly why this framework works so well. It doesn't require you to predict the future. It just requires you to be honest about what kind of person you want to have been when you look back, whenever that looking back happens to occur. There's a phrase I love: long-term thinking is really just empathy for your future self. Most bad financial decisions in both directions, the overspending and the excessive hoarding, come from a failure of that empathy. We treat our future self like a stranger, someone else's problem, instead of the same person we'll wake up as tomorrow, and the day after that, and years down the line. So here's what I want you to take from all of this, and I promise this is more useful than another tip about index funds or emergency funds, even though those things matter too. Independence isn't a finish line. It's not a number that unlocks a permanent vacation. It's a spectrum, and every dollar you don't spend today nudges you slightly further along it. Some days that progress is invisible. It sits quietly, doing nothing you can feel. But then life throws something at you: a layoff, an illness, an opportunity you couldn't take advantage of without cash on hand, and suddenly all that invisible progress becomes very, very visible. Happiness isn't about the number in your account either. It's the gap between what you have and what you expect to have. And that gap is something you actually have some control over, maybe more control than you have over your income. Every time you let a stranger's highlight reel quietly move your goalposts, you make yourself poorer without spending a single dollar.